And I remember this happened in a training room, an NLP training room. And I was like, I went right back to being like 10 years old. And what was happening is I was in the training room and I was like getting flustered because the slides weren't matching the printout. And I had this feeling like, why can't they just figure out how to do the slides and match the printout that they have? This is really, but what was beneath that was a fear that I'm not going to get it right.
Yes.
And then I went right back to school.
Yes.
When I was like trying to get good grades and like doing all the things. And I was like having all the stress before the test and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's what this is. It's this energetic dynamic of there's someone in authority. There's a test coming up. I got to get it. And then they don't give me the information that I actually need. And so then I was triggered because I knew. So asking yourself, observing the situation of what you think it is, and then taking a step back and then just looking at the energetics of it.
Yes.
And by that, what is it that you're really looking for? What is it truly? Like, it wasn't about the slideshow not matching the printout.
How dare they?
Rude, right? It was about me afraid that I wasn't going to get it right.
Yes.
And so that's what was at the layer beneath that. And then to elaborate more on that, there was an authority figure. So I look at those things too, as who do I put on pedestals and who do I consider authority? And does that matter in this circumstance? And where have I ever felt that exchange with authority or a peer in the past? There was a situation today, actually, that I got to the root of, which was a dynamic that I was playing out with Mike's ex. We were trying to work together on something, and the communication was just things weren't flowing. I was feeling misunderstood and unheard. And I was like, oh my God, it's my sister.
Yeah.
It's my sister growing up that just didn't want to deal with something. And I was trying to communicate and work together. And I was like, that's what this is.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. When you recognize it's not actually the situation that is the situation, like you're playing out something that is really from childhood that needs to be resolved. And then you can so I know that when I'm triggered and whenever I'm triggered, it's usually not because of the situation at hand.
Correct. The map is never the territory.
Exactly. It's, pause for a moment.
Yeah.
I'm getting triggered. Let me go back to childhood, figure out what needs to be shifted, sorted, reassociated, establish a new meaning with something. And then it's, okay, I let myself off of the hook. And then suddenly the situation, you're like, that's no big deal. Why am I why am I even doing
it?
It
just reminds me of that other situation. That's why I'm mad.
Yeah. So it's almost like an open loop that's wanting closure. There's an energetic dynamic that needs closure. And so we'll manifest that in certain dynamics, and people will do it with their businesses, which inhibits them from making money. Just like when it showed up in my one client that was like playing out a mom dynamic with her boss. And so that's the nuances of how it actually affects your money. The thing that's so funny is that everybody wants more money. That's a decision.
That's right.
Believe everybody wants more money. But that's actually not the case. Some people don't, and that's totally fine. But people will come to a money coach thinking that we're going to talk about money.
That's right.
And really what it is, we talk about beliefs about yourself and identity.
Yeah, because the money is just, the amount of money in your bank account or the amount of money that's flowing into your life is just symptomatic of what you believe about yourself.
Yep. And what you believe about the world.
Exactly. So it's the perfect place to go to first. That is really what changes things and what causes you to make the money that you make or lose the money in the way that you do. What's really interesting, as you were sharing that, I thought about how I used to have this story around money that I thought was, like, I look back at it now and it's funny. But I used to think that it was bad, and the reason being is because I had this story in my mind that my family that was well off while I was growing up used money to control me. That was the story. Now, that's not necessarily what they were doing, but as a teenager, I made it mean that, decided money's bad. Now, what's interesting is it reminds me of this, like the movie King Arthur that came out recently. It's a Guy Ritchie film. And King Arthur, when he wasn't the king yet, he went to pick up the sword and he couldn't pick up the weapon because he started having visions of his murderous uncle. And as he did that, he was unable to pick up the weapon. So in an interesting way, that metaphor correlates to this because he was making the association of the sword being a murderous weapon because his murderous uncle used it. I was making money be something bad because I was controlled by, or thought I was controlled by it.
Totally.
And that wasn't the reality at all. That's just the association that I made. So I would push it away or try to get rid of it by spending it as soon as I came in, because I was like, I can't be in the possession of this, then I will be like them, kind of thing.
Exactly. Going back to the complex of equivalences and the beliefs that we have about things that are actually neutral.
That's right.
It's totally neutral.
Yeah.
Money is neutral. Adopting that thought can set you free.
That's right.
When you look at the money in your bank account and decide that it's neutral, and then shift from feeling the guilt, shame, embarrassment, whatever you may be feeling in the past, and turn it into a game.
That's right.
And then do just like what you said and what you're leading people through with your coaching, which is set the goal, expect the obstacle.
Yes. And get excited when it's there.
Yeah, because this is the journey.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like when you get triggered now, you associate it to a playful state, which I've started to do the same thing. If I get triggered by something, there's a moment where I'm maybe unconscious that I am triggered. And then once I realize it, it goes into more of a curious, playful. But I do that with pain as well. Because I've started to understand that a lot of like random pain that has no reason for being there is most likely something emotional. And so when it comes up, I'm like, ooh, interesting.
What is this telling me?
Yeah, like this all about. There's a much better way to react than, oh no, I have this problem again. I'm in this situation. Or like the trigger being like, oh, I can't believe this person did this thing. And that is never a good way to respond to it, because as soon as you're in that state of being, you're just going to further go into the narrative, further go into the story and trap yourself more and more. I always will tell people, like, even like little things, if you read a horoscope or if somebody reads your tarot cards, you can say whatever you want about that stuff, but what's important and what's of significance to that is what is grabbing you emotionally about that. And if it makes you feel good, okay, what's that about? Where can I explore more of that and bring more of whatever I believe about myself into my life that I'm letting this thing tell me about, but not letting myself recognize it on my own. Or if it is something bad, okay, now what do I believe about myself? What am I making this mean? Because all these things are neutral until we give them meaning.
Until we give them meaning. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I love what you said about like, oh, making this fun.
Yeah.
Because what's really fascinating is that most people, and I believe a lot of this is like conditioning from childhood. You do something bad, you get punished. We as adults do this. You do something bad, you get punished. People think often, I've witnessed a lot of people who, myself included, who get into the pattern of thinking that they need to punish themselves if they don't make enough or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's actually the opposite is true. Like, we need to look for the greatness. Like, we have to be our own best cheerleaders, advocates, internal mothers, fathers, coaches, to see all of the good we did.
Yes.
And all of the successes we've had. Because successes, when we can look back and look at our own successes as successes, it begets more of that. We start getting into that energetic flow, and then your thoughts change and your feelings change, right? You're starting to think differently about yourself at an identity level. And then you start living into, I am a successful person, when you allow yourself to really hone in and witness that. And so that's that opening there of going from the conditioned response of, I need to punish myself if I'm not good enough, to, no, I just need to love myself.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's really the biggest key component in making money now is really coming from a place of self-love. Now,
that's right.
I want to add a caveat here, because a lot of really successful entrepreneurs are actually punishing themselves into success. Yeah,
I've seen that happen with clients, with colleagues, with people who are also really successful doing that exact thing. And it reminds me, and I wanted to ask you what your perspective is on this, but I always love the idea of people, they give their power away in one of three ways or more, or one or more of these three ways. They either give it to circumstances, to people, or to self-blame. And many people confuse, and I've confused this myself many times, I'm people in this situation, confuse self-blame for responsibility. And the self-blame is the punishment side of things. So what is the difference between those two things? Because some people think that they're taking responsibility because they're like, yeah, I'm the asshole here and I'm so terrible. That's not how you do it.
Yeah. And working through, like, where does that lead? You're like, okay, I punished myself because I did something that I'm not proud of. I punished myself. So, like, where does that lead? That gives me more guilt, more shame. And then what are my urges from that place? Is to do more of the shit that I'm not proud of.
Correct.
So it is this perpetual cycle. And the thing to really contradict that, really deciding, recognizing that's not a functional tool in the tool belt to use for your success. And to decide, we make limiting decisions in life. And, I can't have this, I can't have what I want, the thing. We can also make empowering decisions about ourselves.
That's right.
I am no longer going to beat myself up and punish myself because I know that doesn't get me. That doesn't get me where I want to go.
It certainly doesn't equal results.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't, because it totally drains the energy. Now, what I mentioned earlier with some people can beat themselves up into success.
Yeah, what's that?
Those aren't, so that's like the illusion of success, but it's also overtaxing on the body. A lot of people it comes from a place of enoughness. And so there is this drive, oftentimes very unhealthy, because it's all meant to try to prove something.
Correct.
Oh, I'm successful. Now I can love myself.
And then they just move that goalpost once again.
And then they just move it out. Then it's 1 million, then it's 10 million, then it's 100 million. It's never good enough because they're in that frequency of I'm not enough.
Yeah.
And so when we are able to look and celebrate every one of our small wins and be our own advocate, be our own coach, and look at all the good that we've done, that is life-giving energy. And then from that place, you take more, even your biology, the way that you carry yourself is different. If you look at people going into interviews or like before the interview, you can tell based off of just their physiology how they're feeling and what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So the signals that we are sending out to the world when we are truly in alignment with ourselves, and it's like this magnetic. And that's like when suddenly people just want to reach out to you and work with you and be in your energy. That's when the flow happens. That's when the abundance flow happens.
Where everything seems easy. Yeah. You're just hitting nothing but net.
Yeah, exactly.
And the reality is you're just loving yourself in that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reality is that you've decided not to beat yourself up anymore and to look for all of the positive in every situation. Everything is a learning opportunity. Everything is a learning opportunity. And so a lot of entrepreneurs too will get trapped into the, I failed. Like it's a bad thing. Of course you failed. Yeah. You're supposed to. It's part of it.
Exactly.
And there's no such thing as failure. It's only lessons.
Yeah. It's feedback.
So, So flipping the switch and being able to see, what did I learn here? How did this make me stronger? What did I do right here? Creates the opening, and it's that inflection point of this self-sabotage and beating yourself up behavior to looking at the scenario and like, how can I use this? What did I learn from this? How does this make me stronger? And then leaning into, what did I do great about that? And that reverses the wheel and gets you going to the results that you actually are hoping to create.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's funny, like, to think about, is I can't unsee it now, like thinking in that way. Yeah. But it's funny to think, you actually used to not do that at all. Like you would punish yourself, you would beat yourself up, and it's crazy. But I think, interestingly enough, like anything else, the contrast gives value to like what we're talking about now. Like having gone through that is not completely useless. Even that has its own lessons and learnings within it. Totally. The contrast itself shows us that, this is the preferred way to go.
Yeah, this works. This doesn't work. Yeah, this gets me to where I want to go. This does not.
That's right. Can't have the light without the dark, up without the down.
Yeah. I always like to look to nature too. And look to it in the sense of there are these universal laws that are in place with all of creation.
Yes.
And there is also an element of fractals. So if you observe a dynamic in something microscopic, it can also be cosmic. If we zoom all the way out
Yeah.
And so I'll look to nature and witness a dynamic happening. This happened when we got baby chicks, and the little runt ones were just getting picked on and crowded out and stuff like that. And I was just like, at this time I was thinking like, what would it be like if our son went to a public school instead of a private school? And like, I was just observing these chicks and how they were like just so nasty and so mean to the smallest one. And I was like, nope, he's staying in the private school. Because it's this fractalization of human behavior. So I sometimes look to nature and dynamics because money follows universal laws. So money follows this also. It's not outside of the equation. It's all inclusive, right?
That's right.
So
that is, it's very interesting. I love the practice of using the nature or the outside world itself as metaphors for reflecting on things internally. What you notice based on the idea of perception is projection is you're only noticing yourself in conversations, in nature, in circumstances. So when those beliefs are triggered, when those stories are triggered, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
I can change that.
Yeah.
It's harder to change the external reality than it is to just change the internal. I think one of the metaphors I love about that is if you're looking in the mirror and you want the reflection to smile, you don't like grab the mirror and smile. No, you just smile and then it instantly occurs.
I love that.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous to do that.
Yeah, of course. It's so simple, yet so profound. You're I have to change for the outsides to change.
There's something that I didn't even notice the power of this until recently. I was taking a client through a session and we were talking about the context of relationships. And I didn't realize that this was actually a decision. And I think I had shared this with you through our coaching, but in my relationship now, prior to the relationship happening, prior to me even meeting my girlfriend, I had said this statement to myself. I said, I am ready and I trust that XYZ is going to happen. And when I said that to the client to give him an example, because he was also working on that context, it struck him and I'm ready is a decision. And many people are walking around complaining about their situation and have not decided to be ready to change it.
Yes.
Sometimes that is the very first step. Just decide that you're ready to make the change. And then we get stuck into that cycle of preparing to prepare.
That I'm getting ready to be ready to get ready to be ready.
And then it just keeps going because again, it's a moving goalpost. If you haven't decided to be ready, then you're always going to be stuck in that loop over and over again. And
you can always punt the ball down the line further and you find any excuse to do so. But until you, like you said, decide, no, there is not an unresourceful person, only unresourceful states, which is something that we've learned together through NLP as well. And this is so true and so evident. When you decide internally that you have the resources, internally they start showing up too. Because you're taking action and that action begets more action and then resources start coming in because you're putting value out and it comes back in the form of money.
Correct.
Which you buy the whatever studio gear, equipment or whatever. But to all the people who are using that as a reason to not start, make the decision, just do it anyways.
Yeah. One example of that is we're filming this on an iPhone right now in cinematic mode, which I've had this phone for a good while now. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I should get a DSLR camera like that. That would make my content better. And then I didn't even think about the fact that this phone has this mode on it that makes it look close to it. And I'm like, what am I doing? The resource is right here. So I just wasn't deciding to be ready to do this.
Yep.
And here we are.
It was so funny too, because Mike and I were out in the garden. We're like, wow, we're going to be teaching gardening lesson, how to be really independent and self-sufficient, come off the system if ever needed. So I've been learning gardening and how to grow stuff. And we're like, wow, we really need a high quality camera to have out there in the garden. So we didn't do a lot of filming until one day I'm like, no, I made the decision.
Exactly.
We've got this stuff growing. Let's just start recording. And I was astonished to see that, we had the resources all the time, except the mental resources because we hadn't decided that we were ready yet. Yeah.
That's such a little thing that makes such a big difference is just the decision to be ready.
Oh yeah. And we zoomed in all the way. You could see all, I was like,
the technology is here.
Yeah. I've had the technology in my pocket the whole time.
Exactly. Looking all around for it.
Which is such a beautiful metaphor. We have what we need in our own pocket and we just don't even know it.
Yeah, that is wild to think about, is all the information is there. Anything that you're wondering about or think you don't know is literally accessible in that way.
And going back to the obstacle is the way, whatever goals people are setting for themselves, all of the, oh, well, I don't know how to do this. I can't do that. I'm not sure if I need this. You don't necessarily need to find that and build a team and find the right people to do the stuff. If you're a solopreneur, it's use your resources.
That's right.
Because you have them. YouTube Academy.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
And it's free.
And that is the obstacle is the way, is when you lean in, you're like, okay, this is what I perceive as an obstacle. The way through that is becoming the person who doesn't have that obstacle by learning it and overcoming it.
Yeah.
One at a time.
And you must face it in order to do that.
Yep.
So speaking of some of these projects that you're doing, what are you most excited about now? Because we're here at Cosmic Ranch. We haven't talked about it yet. Yeah. So what are you most excited about right now with Cosmic Ranch?
Yeah, with Cosmic Ranch, we've been learning so much about what we can do to become more sovereign. It started with our finances. First, we decided, okay, we really need to be sovereign in our finances. But now it's so much more than that. And it's like, how do we truly become self-sufficient and set ourselves free, liberate ourselves from the systems and not have to be in that energy of fear. What I noticed was it's hard to be creative and when you're in the scarcity mode.
Correct.
And when you're dependent on the system, you can get wrapped into this scarcity mode. And, oh, what if they turn off the power, or the grocery stores need vaccine cards, or the case may be, and things are so uncertain. How do I create more safety within myself? And that is, to not have to rely on external sources for my survival. How do I internalize those resources? And it's okay. And this is for anyone. Like, how do you start to begin? Like, how do you begin thinking in that way? And what's the first thing to do? For me, it was learning how to grow food. Yeah. If I'm seeing all these global food shortages, articles, like, I'm not going to just let that fear permeate my being.
That's right.
I'm going to lean into the obstacle and I'm going to learn maybe just one thing. If I can do one crop, and anyone can do this in their own home, even if you're in a New York apartment, you can decide on one thing that you can start growing that can help sustain you if you need to.
That's right.
And so we just started looking at the world that way. It's like, it became this fun game that we played versus like the prepper doomsdayer, like fear driven thing.
Yeah, that doesn't sound as fun.
Yeah, it's not as fun. So I decided to look at it through the lens of, all right, if I'm at the grocery store, I'm going to buy a few extra because I want to feel abundant. I want to have all the laundry soap I need for years to come and not have to go to the store.
That's right.
You know what
Yes.
I mean? and I decided that the meaning I was going to give that was an abundant meaning. I want people to come over and never have to worry about running out of food. Like, I wanted to feel abundant in really uncertain times. And we decided to go from just teaching about money to also teaching about what we're doing at the ranch. And
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Where do I sign?
Yeah. And we're going to make this really like a wide net approach where we just have it a really low ticket cost for the masses so that everyone can start learning these things in their own pace, in their own home. Anything from just how do you garden, how do you grow food, to like all of the different techie things of like how to, all of the guns. Mike's really into guns. We've got a small armory here, which is hilarious.
Beautiful. I love it.
So yeah, he'll show the gun room and all that, but also solar panels and what are the most needed essential items in case the power goes out, like in case this happens.
Thinking through the potential obstacles. And that's even the way that I coach clients to set goals. Like, one of the steps in my process is not just planning out like what you can do, but let's assess what obstacles are going to come up. What are you asking for by wanting to do this? Like, one of my clients is a real estate investor, and his goal is to be the best in his area. And I'm like, what obstacles are you inviting when you do that? And he's like, other people who also want that. Yeah. So you prep for that, like ahead of it, get proactive. And these are the skills that I need. These are the strengths within myself that I can access. And these are the resources I need to acquire in order to make that real.
Yeah. And always checking the motives too. It's like checking the motives of why you want something. If I wanted to have a full pantry and have a garage stocked up with extra food because I was in fear and afraid, then that is going to lead to toxicity in the body. And then I'm going to have to hire you to help me do pain paradigm and work through the pain I will be self-inflicting.
Yes. If it's coming from that place,
it's not sustainable.
Correct.
So ask, what would that provide me? What would getting that goal provide
That's
me?
right. Make sure it's not a moving away from value.
Totally. 100%.
Amazing. So before we wrap up, my last question, and you covered a lot of it, but I'll ask you again explicitly, is what does it mean to you to live a liberated life?
To me, living a liberated life is setting myself free from any belief that I was never not good enough.
I love that. That's amazing. And that's where it starts, and it keeps going through all the different stages of a person's evolution, is setting themselves free for those exact reasons. So where can people find out more about the self-sustainability, or if they want to get richer every day, like where can they find you and the work that y'all do?
For Richer Every Day, you can go to richereveryday.com. And Cosmic Ranch, we're going to be launching the podcast and sharing a lot about personal development and also all the things that we've discussed today with money and things that we're seeing coming in the pipelines and what people can do to become self-sufficient. And then we're going to be launching the community as well.
Beautiful.
So yeah, there'll be much more to share, and I'm excited too.
Amazing. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. It felt like it flew by.
Yeah.
And hope to have you again soon at some point.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks.
All right. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It is my mission to help as many people as possible to live a liberated life with unshakable inner peace through the content on this podcast. Subscribe to this channel with notifications on to be notified daily whenever we share a new episode.